Hi, I'm Mark Childs from Charles Davidson. Welcome to our video series on FMCG issues. Virtually every supplier in our industry is very concerned about and focused on containing the cost of doing business with major retailers. That's appropriate because trade spend is the second or third biggest line item on virtually every company's P&L. In addition to that, we know from our benchmarking work around the world that the trade spend as a percentage of sales is growing year on year. Focusing on quantitative makes sense, of course, and many companies invest a lot of money in people and systems to more effectively manage their trade spend. We at Charles Davidson offer a world best practice solution for just that. But I also believe there's a strong case for looking at trade spend quality and ensuring that there's dialogue in the business about that on an ongoing basis. Retailers are increasingly seeking to control how spend is directed. They do so in large part by either pushing towards wanting net pricing, and I wrote a paper recently comparing the activities of Tesco in the UK, Coles in Australia and Loblaws in Canada exactly on that. They also increasingly want you to participate in their program in exactly the way they want, which I guess is understandable, but we need to be very careful as suppliers that we're not putting ourselves in a position where the effectiveness of our trade funds is being eroded. We need to be careful that as much as possible we are directing our funds towards influencing the shopper at point of purchase. So let's be clear about the definition of quality. To put it simply, if trade spend is focused on influencing the shopper at point of purchase, that's good quality spend. If it goes into the pocket of the retailer or becomes gradually eroded so that its impact at point of sale is minimized, that's bad spend. And of course, we can define many stages along the way from bad to good, and that's part of the way we go about measuring trade spend quality. Just to drive home the point about the fact that quality matters, consider this diagram. What you'll see in this chart is the results of trade spend productivity benchmarking in Western Europe. Each of the dots represents an individual company from those studies. What we're comparing here on one axis is the trade spend quality score, and I won't go into the detailed methodology, but we're basically saying you get a higher score if more of your trade funds are focused on activating brands with shoppers. And we compared that with the indexed growth rate for each company. That is, an index against the average for all manufacturers in the study. What you can see quite clearly is a strong correlation between achieving a high score in quality and achieving a higher growth rate than the average. Now, I suppose I should be a little clearer in setting out for you what we mean in detail by trade spend quality. I've given you the rough idea that it's about being shopper facing, but there's actually more to it than that. From all our benchmarking work, we've identified 4 principal criteria for measuring it. The first is, do you have discretion over it? Do you control how much you spend and where it's spent? Quite often we find that either by custom or practice or in specific contracts, you're locked in and you don't have discretion. Secondly, is the impact on the shopper measured? Thirdly, is it paid on results? Or is it just paid no matter what? And fourthly, and the one that I've been emphasizing so far is it shopper facing? Does it have an impact on the outcome at point of purchase? I want to emphasize here that the focus on trade spend quality should probably be at aggregate level and should be medium to long term. I say that because the big risk with trading strategy is gradual erosion of its productivity. I'll give you a very clear example here. Volume rebates are often used and can produce very good results in the short term. But we all know what happens to volume rebates. Very often, retailers expect to receive the funds at the end of the period, no matter what the outcome was. And even if activity failure was their fault, it's very hard to establish that. And manufacturers often find that they're paying the rebate no matter what. That's not the big problem though. The big problem occurs in year 2 or year 3, where the argument over what the targets should be continues, and we find that by year 3, the volume rebate virtually becomes part of the base. So when I see volume rebates, I give it a relatively low score in quality terms because of the risk of erosion. Just to really drive home this point about erosion, I want to give the example of what in Australia, in my home market, we call bundled terms. In the late 90s, the big retailers in Australia proposed moving to aggregated terms. Their argument was very plausible at the time. The quality of joint business planning was pretty good. Category management and category reviews were working quite well. So the retailers argued that really it would save a lot of time and energy if we simply bundled up all of those elements of trade spend into a net pricing deal, and that they would take care of us. They would continue to do joint business planning, and they would set the appropriate level of activity behind brands to go with that. But I can tell you that every sales director in Australia now knows how that eventually turned out. Before long, displays started to be harder to obtain. It was okay for the big end of town or for private label because they were getting the displays that they needed. But the smaller manufacturers found that hurdle rates got tougher. They also found that retailers started to discover new and better ways to seek payments for other services that the manufacturer thought he'd already paid for in the bundled terms that had been agreed 2 or 3 years earlier. So what we ended up with was bundled terms became the new base, and manufacturers found again and again that they had to add to or pay what became over and above payments to get activity to support their brands. So the things that we identify as good spend and give high scores to in our analysis are probably not going to surprise you very much. First among them, obviously, is off-location display that's on a one-off basis, that's paid for, and where you are clear about achieving compliance and pay for that compliance. Another would be temporary price reductions. Another would be retailer magazine adverts, where you pay for the advert and you get it, and it appears and you know what you're getting. Another would be, say, in-store sampling, where you're paying for the activity and you can actually see that you're getting something for it and it's activating with shoppers. Those things that we rate as obviously bad spend and therefore give a poor score to are things like, well, I've already mentioned volume rebates and the risk that they face in being eroded through time, even though they may produce an uplift in year 1. But there are other things like listing fees that I mentioned earlier in this video, margin guarantees that we see sneaking into some markets, as a matter of fact, shrinkage allowances, really anything that's a spend that goes into the pocket of the retailer that isn't activating your brands at point of purchase. Besides the very obvious good spend on one hand and the clearly bad spend on the other is a whole grey area of spend elements that could go one way or the other. EDLP is a good example. For some manufacturers in some categories, it's a very appropriate strategy, but often retailers will force other categories into EDLP where the risk of erosion is significant, where the impact of the EDLP strategy declines through time and the price becomes part of the base, and we know very well that what happens next is the retailer then wants high-low pricing off that new base. Another is pay-for-play fees with category management. Now, I'm not saying that manufacturers shouldn't do any of these things that are not only grey but even bad, but simply that there's a commercial reality that needs to be considered, and that when you're making those decisions, you need to understand, and it should be part of the dialogue, that we're making decisions that are reducing our trade spend quality. So why call out trade spend quality, and why be so insistent that it should be part of your company's ongoing dialogue? Well, there's an important human factor in trade spend performance. Account directors, who manage trade spends and set trading strategy, of course, have perhaps one of the most difficult jobs in our industry. They're under constant short-term pressure, besieged on one side by tough, demanding customers, and on the other side by management also demanding results. They're at personal career risk all of the time. Can lose, hard to win. It's hard for them to challenge the basic trade spend architecture that they're working within. But it's important to consistently emphasise to all players in this game that it's wrong to mortgage the future, that things like volume rebates that clearly get eroded through time might be attractive to solve a short-term problem, but we need to understand that we're putting at risk the medium and long-term performance of trade spend by doing it. Otherwise, we're at risk always of losing ground. Quality of trade spend should be part of the internal ongoing dialogue of the business and should become an important metric for performance. This is Mark Childs from Childs Davidson. Thank you for watching.